Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media.
Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the Church Universal and Triumphant Ranch, about 10 miles northwest of Gardner, Montana. The northern boundary of Yellowstone National Park is only 5 miles from the ranch, and it backs up to a very remote stretch of the Gallatin National Forest. The land consists of rugged mountains, rolling foothills, and river valleys shaped by volcanic activity, glaciation, and erosion over millions of years. The ranch sits at 5,100 feet above sea level, and the mountains surrounding it climb to over 9,400 feet high. With a montane climate, winters here are very cold and snowy, and summers are mild and sunny. Conditions like this are a great place for forests of Douglas fir, lodgepole pine, and quaking aspen to provide shade for Rocky Mountain juniper and serviceberry bushes. Fruit is seasonally available from huckleberry, buffalo berry, and chokecherry bushes. With so much room and food, moose, deer, elk, and bighorn sheep thrive while fleeing from bobcats, coyotes, cougars, wolves, black bears, and grizzly bears. Being located outside of park boundaries, this area draws adventurers, hikers, and wildlife watchers who want to avoid the crowds and rules of Yellowstone. Given the abundant wildlife, hunters also find the area very appealing. There was a big old grizzly mama who'd worked her way into local lore, not for all the right reasons. Bear number 79, as she was known, wasn't all that big at 300 pounds, but she could pop out the cubs. She'd raised 5 litters over the last 23 years near Gardner and passed on her genes and know-how to several generations. She wasn't an angel, though. She had quite a reputation for being a troublemaker and had consequently been relocated a few times over the last 10 years. Her sense of comfort around the town had an endearing quality to some town residents, that is, before her protective instincts brought calamity. On November 8, 1996, 52-year-old hunting guide Joe Heimer was leading a hunt for his client, Sonja Crowley, on the land behind the church's ranch. Sonja had come in from Chamberlain, South Dakota, to bag a trophy bull of a lifetime, but the events of this day would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that she would have been better off avoiding. Sometimes the things you don't know are the most important, and what Heimer and Crowley didn't know is bear number 79 and her 3 cubs had been feeding on the gut piles of 4 or 5 elk that hunters had taken in the area, and they were looking for their next meal. Recent snowfall had painted the hillside in a vibrant glow as Heimer and Crowley topped a small rise while glassing the adjacent hillside for elk sign. Separated by a few yards, Heimer turned to say something to his client when the sight of a grizzly bear sow with 3 one-year-old cubs scattered around her came into focus beyond Crowley. Thinking quickly, Heimer grabbed Crowley and told her to be silent while pointing at the grizzlies. Carefully tiptoeing back about 50 feet, the hunters hunkered down behind some brush, hoping the bears would pass them by. Eagerly peering over the brush, Heimer watched as the sow lifted her nose to the breeze and snapped her head in their direction. He knew the sow had winded them as she thundered toward them, parting brush as she came. Heimer hoped her charge was a bluff, so he held his fire and yelled to identify himself as a human being. His 7mm mag hunting rifle had plenty of power to take the bear down, but being familiar with grizzlies, he waited in hopes she'd pull up. Well, she didn't pull up. As soon as the sow was far too close for comfort, Heimer fired at the charging bear, but his bullet zipped right past her. He missed, likely due to the stress of the situation. As the sow approached, her head was low, but she lifted it as she began to attack Heimer. He worked the action of his rifle just as the sow swatted it from his hands and took him to the ground. Fighting from his back, Heimer kicked at the angry bear as she snapped her jaws at his legs. Every couple of kicks, the sow would bite into his thighs or lower legs before he would kick with the other one in reaction. I've heard that when you're fighting for your life, you'll do some desperate things, and Heimer was no exception. For some reason, he thought grabbing the angry sow by the upper lip was a good idea, so he held on as hard as he could. With his free hand, he rained down blows about the bear's head as fast as he could send them. Knowing she was trying to rip out his guts, he controlled her head while he beat her like a dirty rug. Crowley was scrambling to pick up Heimer's hunting rifle as he grappled the grizzly. All at once the sow lifted her head and turned in the woman's direction. After seeing what the sow had done to Heimer and how hard he had to fight to stop it, Crowley opted to run. In this unfair racing competition, the sow overtook her in a few steps and swatted Crowley to the ground from behind. Showing no mercy on the woman, the grizzly clamped its jaws onto her lower face and shook its head back and forth rapidly, crushing Crowley's jawbones. In a quick succession of bites, the grizzly cracked, shattered, or broke most of Crowley's facial bones. The woman later recalled how she could hear the bear's teeth raking against her skull. Having severely wounded Crowley, the sow turned back toward her cubs. She got about 50 yards away when she noticed Heimer picking up his 7mm mag and dashed back toward him. This time the stocky cowboy didn't miss. He drove 160 grains of hot lead through the sow's shoulder bones and lungs. The sow shuddered with the impact of the bullet and dropped flat to her stomach. Heimer turned to Crowley and saw her face disfigured by the bear's jaws. Before he could render any aid, out of the corner of his eye he saw the sow rise to her feet once again. Somehow the sow charged toward Heimer, who held his powder until she was nearly at the end of his rifle barrel. A thunderous clap echoed off the nearby hillside as the sow once again collapsed, her momentum causing her to slide to a stop between Heimer's legs. The hunting guide community is a lot closer knit than you might think. Guides hunting in nearby areas of the ranch were converging to help, radioing for medical responders from the ranch. The ranch ambulance was quickly on the scene and carrying Heimer and Crowley to medical centers back in town. Both were rushed to Bozeman's Deaconess Hospital after initial assessment in the hospital at Livingston. Heimer's wounds were serious, with the tendons and muscles around both of his knees needing an unknown amount of sutures to repair and close. Crowley, on the other hand, endured emergency surgery, which ended at 5 in the morning on Saturday. The specialists who worked on her did their best to repair damaged tissues and set displaced bones. They knew this would be the first of several operations she would have to suffer through before recovering. Regarding the 3 cubs, the Montana Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks placed them under observation. They knew bear number 79 denned very close to the attack site and figured her cubs would spend the winter there. Officers believed the cubs would be able to make it on their own and didn't intervene with them in any way. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, linked below, will give you ad-free early access to our episodes, and the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. Questioning why the sow and her cubs were not hibernating brings us back to the reason bears hibernate in the first place. When abundant food sources are unavailable, they head to their dens for winter. This fall was unseasonably warm, and there was an abundance of elk gut piles left by hunters, enticing the bears to stay out long enough to consume them. Joe Heimer had been within arm's length of sows with cubs a few times over his 30 years of guiding hunts, and had never been attacked until this. His familiarity with the bears may be what fueled him to fight so hard to save his and his client's life. Though Sonja Crowley had a lengthy recovery period, Joe Heimer was back to guiding elk hunts by the end of the week. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Did being captured and relocated a few times before this attack reduce the sow's tolerance for the presence of people? Did the sow finally snap and attack people due to her advanced age for a bear of 23 years old? How many examples of familiarity breeding contempt can you find in this story? I'll gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it.
Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider clicking on the like button and clicking on the bell icon. We'll help you know when we post our new episodes. Posting our video links to your social media profiles furthers awareness, and it's fun. We slashed our prices in our merch store, linked below, so check out the bargains there while you shop. As a member of our human community, remember to adventure bravely and be careful out there, especially in bear country.